Live. Welcome, everybody. Well, we're doing another live networking event here at the 17thfloor.com. As a reminder, the 17th Floor is an online community focused on the growing practice of human capital management, which gathers HR, accounting, and payroll professionals together for a peer-to-peer engagement, education, and mentorship. Every 2 weeks, the 17th Floor hosts a live networking chat featuring industry specialists, which we chat about all our experiences, uplifting businesses, and elevating the well-being of employees. My name is Bianca Mueller, Community Manager at Wagepoint and Board of Advisor member for the 17th Floor. I have a passion for payroll and HR related topics as they are so important to the community that I serve of accounting and bookkeeping professionals across Canada. Today, I have the wonderful pleasure of moderating the 17th Floor discussion on how to increase new hire retention. Your new employees are particularly vulnerable to churn. Without interventions, an average of 33% could exit within their first 3 months. Companies with the best retention outcomes are the ones that understand the significance of first impressions and how to create a positive experience for new hires. Fortunately for all of us today, we have First 30 CEO, retention and employee onboarding expert Amy Davies, who will share proven strategies for engaging and retaining new hires. As mentioned, Amy is an employee retention and onboarding expert and the founder and CEO of First 30, which offers advanced onboarding and outplacement services to businesses. She is also the author of A Spark in the Dark, illuminating your path to a brilliant career in a reorg world, and the upcoming What Employees Want, proven strategies to attract, retain, and engage talent, which will be releasing this coming September 2023. Before founding First 30, Amy worked in leadership roles as a consumer and employee researcher and strategist for top-tier companies in North America and the UK, including Unilever, Mars Wrigley, Grainger, and Rogers. Feel free to ask questions and comments in the live chat during the discussion today. I will help moderate the questions. And for those of you watching this on replay, this session in replay, you can contact the panelists or us. Visit the 17thfloor.com forum to ask your peers questions. Everyone, please welcome Amy.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here to talk about one of my very favorite topics in the world. It's always funny to hear someone else describe you because, I just think of myself as a dog owner. I don't know if we have any other dog people in the crowd, but I have a 2-year-old Doberman who keeps me quite busy. And he's probably missing me today because I'm at the office rather than at home. But anyway, thank you. And I thought what we would start by doing is sharing some data. I think that data really sets the stage for why we're having the conversations we're having about this topic. And I know that the 17th Floor has done a fantastic series on retention in general, employee retention. And so I would definitely encourage anyone to take a look at the previous sessions that you guys have run, because this is a really hot topic right now. I know we're hearing a lot about tech layoffs. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh about that because that's very serious and it is a huge impact to the people that are affected. But the reason that I kind of reflect when I say that is because even though we're seeing those layoffs, there are so many other industries where there's actually still a huge retention problem. So I think that there's definitely layoffs happening. And I'm really hoping that because all of these other industries are having so much trouble with retention, there's going to be some wonderful opportunities for people who have been affected by the tech layoffs, because their skills will be so well received where they're needed the most. And we do have a labor shortage right now. If we look at the population pyramid, in particular in Canada, we see that it's pretty fat right at the top. And it means that there's a lot of people that are aging out. And by that, I mean aging out of the workforce. So they're looking to retire. And that is really having a huge impact on our ability to have the staff that we need in our company. So when we get employees, that makes it incredibly important for us to keep them in our organization. So when we look at the stats, both from the US and Canada, we're seeing in recent years, approximately a quarter of employees are voluntarily leaving the organization that they're in. And when we think about it, and that's why I'm here today to talk about new hire churn, it's because, you know, new hires are the ones that are particularly vulnerable to churn. And what happens with our new hires is, if you imagine you're going into a new company, you're interviewing with multiple different companies all at once, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if you don't get the welcome you're expecting? What if things, you get to your office and you're not feeling like you fit in with the organization? It's been very disorganized. You start to have this hesitation about whether you made the right decision. And if another job offer comes in, well, then you might end up leaving the organization to go to this other place because it seems like the better opportunity, where there's so much that your organization could have done. And Bianca, I know you and I had a conversation about this the other day a little bit, but we're really focused at First 30 on imprinting and the power of imprinting. And that's when you're first engaging with a new stimulus of any kind. It could be a category like chocolate. Yeah, lots of us here are hearing about beer lately. Beer is another category that we could imprint in different ways with that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully not well.
Yeah. I'm trying to re-imprint the gym.
Yeah, re-imprint the gym. So what's happening is this imprinting is a cognitive experience that we're not even aware is happening. So when we engage with, like I said, a category, another person, or an organization for the very first time, we are cognitively very receptive. And what happens if we have a bad experience with a restaurant, with a person, with an organization right from the very start, we build a belief system from that imprinting. And that belief system could be a bad belief system if the organization isn't careful to kind of woo us. We sometimes refer to it, Bianca, at First 30 as love bombing. Love bomb your new employees. And that's for all the reasons I'm talking about right now. This is the most vulnerable tenure group to churn. So we want to make sure that we are getting them excited right off the bat. And after we present this, we're going to talk a little bit about when that process should start, because it's earlier than some of us might think.
I have one question for you, and put me in my place if I'm jumping the gun on it.
Go ahead.
What is that time frame of like that, impressionable time period? Like, is there like an average, span of, obviously it's probably shorter than the 3-month probationary period.
Oh yeah, it's much shorter than that. Yeah. I would really argue that it's even just within those very first few days or that first week. It's not going to be the most firm belief system. Like you still have opportunity to change, but they say, Bianca, that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
Right.
And I think what happens is, if the organization, say, let somebody down on not getting them the tools they need. Like I think most of us have been in that situation. We get into an organization, we're promised all of this, technology, which, we all want our laptop. We all want our phone. Like, what can you do in life without a phone these days? And these devices don't show up. And then I think the organization thinks, oh, I'll make it up to them another day. I'll make it up to them another day. And the problem is the groundwork has already been set.
Yeah.
So yeah, very quickly, and we have to make sure that we're really wooing people fast. So the other thing we might want to consider when we're thinking about retention in general is that it is a lot of the reasons that people leave an organization are preventable, right? If it's due to management, and oh my gosh, so many employees leave because of bad experiences with their colleagues or their manager. There's a really interesting book called Without Conscience. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Bianca. It's written by Dr. Robert Hare, and he's a member of the Order of Canada. And he talks about the prevalence of psychopathy. He says that 4 to 5% of the North American population are non-murderous psychopaths.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know. And you know what? People often will laugh when I say that. It's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
And these aren't people hiding in the fringes. These are people who are engaging, with us all the time. They're people who are incredibly charming. They've mimicked the behavior. They've learned to mimic the behavior that gets them what they want. And they exist in our organizations. And this is a huge reason that people churn from organizations, because I'm not just talking about not getting along with your colleagues. I'm talking about people being abused and bullied in the workplace. And so management and how we hire and what we tolerate in our organizations, the behavior that we tolerate, are going to be really important to our retention.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much that goes into it. But these reasons are not always different when you have new hires. In fact, they're probably almost all leaving for reasons that are preventable, because they're not coming into your organization and retiring.
Exactly.
Later, right? And we know that there is incredible cost to the loss of employees. And it's funny because I think there is a disconnect based on when I talk to people in HR. They're aware, but I don't know that they're measured or evaluated on this cost, right? Whereas when we speak to leadership, they're often the ones that, and there's a lot of HR leaders and HR who are in executive positions, and that is, we see that as well. But I find that depending on who we're talking to in the organization, there's really not a motivation to worry about these numbers, because you've got so many other things to worry about. And I totally get it. But there is a true cost to the bottom line for businesses. So if we think about it, 30 to 50%, it costs 30 to 50% of an employee's salary to replace them. That isn't even looking at the lost days of work. It's not looking at the fact that if you have a new person in a new position that leaves the organization, guess what? They can't hand over anything, right?
Yeah.
Because you lose that institutional knowledge, right? So we lose, a significant amount. So I've done some of the data on it. I've pulled some of the numbers so we can all take a look at this. And actually, I put this entire deck onto a landing page, and I think we'll share it in the comments with you. So that if you want this data, it's called Steal My Slides. So there's a few things there, and we'll talk about a few different things. So all the resources we talk about today, you can get at first30ready.com/the17th floor. But we can put that in the comments for you as well. Now, the data is a bit all over the place, and the question is, how do you get very firm data on this point? There definitely has been surveys that have been conducted, and effective onboarding, we know, really can reduce new hire turnover, and some stats say that that's by 82%. So that is a compelling reason to take a hard look at what you're doing with respect to your employee onboarding if you're looking to drive retention in your organization. Yeah. And it could cost you less, right? Whether it's working with a business like First 30 or investing in headcount, like somebody to actually take on the task of onboarding. I find one of the biggest mistakes companies make, and I'm jumping ahead of myself, is they don't actually give anyone in the organization onboarding in their title or in their job description. So that really means that they might say to somebody, we need to revamp our onboarding program, but then you have to dedicate people's time to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's such a scalable and templatable process. Like if you hired a professional to get that, template going for your company,
yeah,
and you literally scale it and template it, it's such an easy way to like have a controlled and even experience for everyone coming on board, because you also want to have that consistency.
yeah,
Because guess what? Employees are going to talk.
exactly. And
I didn't learn that. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and I think we leave a lot up, and we don't need the slide deck anymore. I know we have someone helping us out, Paula. If you want to take the slides down now, that's fine. But I think that what happens is we think that other people are going to do it, like, oh, the manager will do it, and so no one owns it in a centralized way. And I think that might be a little bit about what you're talking about too, Bianca.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think we want to really dig into, where does this process begin? And you were asking, like, when is this imprinting happen? When is this belief system built? Well, we want to think about it even before the employee starts with our organization. We call it pre-boarding. Some people will say that it starts right with that candidate experience, and I wholeheartedly agree that candidate experience is going to be incredibly important. But I wouldn't necessarily call that part of the onboarding program. When I think of onboarding, we start with pre-boarding, and that begins once that job offer is signed back and that person now works with your organization. And there's so many ways that a company can really help an employee get engaged with the business even before their start date. And I would say that anyone listening to this or watching the replay, if you want to start by doing one thing that will have a huge impact, then start a buddy system in your organization. And Bianca, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but what happens is you will have an onboarding buddy, and that buddy could be someone who's not necessarily in your team, definitely not your manager, just somebody who's your peer in the organization, who might give you a call the week before and say, hey, we're so excited to have you. Do you have any questions that I can answer? And this person can now ask, like, I remember being in organizations, like, what time do people really show up for work, right? And what time? Go ahead.
Right. I was going to say, even just to know where to act, like if you're working in a remote environment, like knowing where to access certain files on the drive, where to save your data, just all those simple steps can really stress someone out that's not familiar and they don't know who to ask. But if you're asking a peer and not like someone in management or part of your hiring process, that makes that conversation a lot easier.
For sure, it does. It's like somebody you don't have to be embarrassed about asking, right? Because there's certain things you do not want to ask your manager because you want them imprinting positively, right? But, the reality is I was a single mom for a long time that I was in the corporate world with 2 little kids that I had to pick up from daycare. And it was really tough. This was pre-COVID, right? Pre-lockdowns. So we weren't living in this hybrid, more flexible world where there was a little more understanding around that. So it was really important to me to know that it's like the expectation is that even though they talk about working hours, like, are those the real hours? And I feel like a buddy is somebody you could ask that question, like, hey, I've got kids, I'm clocked. If I don't get there, I'm going to upset the daycare, and they're going to charge me by the minute for every minute I'm late picking my kids up.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So a pre-boarding, a buddy is great. A buddy can be there for the pre-boarding process, but they can also be that person that greets the new person. They can help the manager with filling some of the gaps during those first few days, whether it's live or virtually, they can at least be a familiar, friendly face and a friend in the organization to start with. And when you're thinking about choosing a buddy, you really want to find somebody who's kind of been with the organization for about at least a year, who may be well connected and understands the organization, and whose performance is good, right?
Yeah.
So that you're
You don't want to pass on any bad habits.
Pardon me?
You don't want to pass on any bad habits.
Oh no, you definitely don't want any bad habits passed on, and you don't want the type of people I was talking about. But sometimes businesses don't even know who those people are, right? Who are not treating their colleagues all that well. So we definitely want to think about a buddy program for our organizations. And if you don't want to start big, just small, just do it small. Pilot it with one team. If you're in HR, just start with the HR team and say, hey, we've noticed a huge difference in the level of engagement of our employees since we launched this program. We're thinking about rolling it out to some other teams in the business, and kind of do it slowly from there. And then the other thing is, make sure that you want managers to send your new employees information about what their first day is going to be like, right? So that if you're logging on, what platform do you use? How do you get on? Those sorts of things. But if they're showing up live, you definitely want them to know, where do they exit transit? Where do they park? Or can they get lunch at the facility where they're working, or coffee? I don't know, but like, I can't live without my coffee in the morning. So it would be pretty tough to start my first day at a job and not have a coffee, and not have known that I need to stop at a coffee shop on the way in to get something. So you want to do that for pre-boarding. Get them excited. We always say that pre-boarding is not sending them documents to sign, their benefits pack. Those are all great and they're necessary. That needs to happen, but that's not really pre-boarding. That's not really driving engagement. I don't know about you, Bianca, but I don't get super excited about getting my criminal background check documents through.
It's true, and it really should be two defined experiences. I could not agree more. And it gives it gives the human and authentic interaction precedence in this situation. And then afterwards you get all the the nitty gritty of all the paperwork and
Yeah, that's right. So, now that we've kind of covered off the pre-boarding experience, want to think a little bit about when that person gets into the doors or opens up their laptop. The other thing I would say is, and I feel like I'll always get a little bit of pushback on this. If you're working from home, I don't feel like your pre-boarding should be setting up your devices and computer. And what we're finding in this new world is that people are being sent their equipment and told that it all must be set up on day one. If you need people to set up a home office, give them that first day or half day to get all their technology set up. That's not something, and we could say, well, they should be enthusiastic, and that might be true, but there might be people like me who are single moms with little kids. They don't have time on their Saturday and Sunday to set up all of this technology. If they finish their last job on the Friday, give them a little time and space to figure all of that out, and then they can join later in the day, or even a couple hours on the Monday morning, right?
That's a really important tip, actually. I think that's really important. I agree.
Yeah, and it's something we don't think about, right? Because we're like, well, it's your first day, you're working remotely, log on. The expectation is everything is done. And the other problem with that is, they might not be able to access IT until the Monday, right? When they start. And so they're trying to set up everything themselves with no support. So anyway, just some considerations, because we really want to get off on the right foot and make sure that we're making people feel like we value their time too, because that makes a statement about who we are as an organization. So the other thing that we want to do is, when they get there, we really want to be thinking. We want it to be an intentional process once they arrive. And I'm thinking someone physically arriving. But we have seen this trend for companies either treating like designing an onboarding program that's entirely for extroverts. And I'm an extrovert. I don't know about
Me
you,
too.
Bianca. Yeah, you too. I could have guessed, but there's a lot of people that you wouldn't know either way. But even as an extrovert, I really have struggled on those first few days at an office when I'm in the office environment and I'm meeting, 20 new people all at once, and my schedule is action packed. It's like this meeting, this meeting, this meeting, and then you finally have a break and you have 3 people come over to your office, and it's like says something great about the organization that everyone wants to meet you, but it's very overwhelming. So think about, how do you break up the day and actually tell people, okay, you're going to get like this time. Don't worry about looking busy. Go for a walk, get your energy back, because it's overwhelming. It's scary, and people are nervous when they're starting a new job, and I think we forget that as employers sometimes. And the other thing is, we're expecting them to really remember all of the things that we're teaching them, right?
I was just going to say, on the topic of retention,
Yeah.
retending, like just remembering who does what.
Yeah. Who does what information they're getting, where to find that information. So there are so many things that we can do to help anyone, whether they're extroverted or introverted, get off to a great start. And one of the recommendations we make is, if they're coming into the office, have them come in at, if say it's like an 8:45 to 5 o'clock, right? That's what you do in an hour for lunch. Let them start at 10 and finish at 3 their first day. Because as a manager or their buddy or whoever is greeting them, they're going to have things to do in the morning. Maybe it's not easy to like get in, get all your stuff, check your email and like run down, and you're going to be all flustered. Whereas if you have an hour or two to, get things sorted out, get everything you need to done, and then you'll be so much more fresh to greet that person anyway. And then you are going to find that they will probably run out of energy. And we always say, like, what is going on here is not necessarily what's going on in here. Those first few
Not for everybody. For me, you can tell how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Part of my extrovertedness, I guess.
Yeah. And that is great if you have people that will be honest with you. But I think when a lot of people start in a job, they're just really trying to demonstrate that they're invested and engaged in all of these things. But what is going on under the surface is a lot of discomfort, right? So we want to be checking in with people. And I do think listen, come in at 10 o'clock. That gives them the chance to find the office, to get settled without having to go through rush hour, and then leave at 3, and we'll call it a day and come back tomorrow. And that could be their first full regular day. But the other thing, so that's a onboarding design for, we call it design for extroverts. Maybe it's not the perfect way to put it, but we say it like that. And then we have onboarding design for introverts. And we know, I've worked with a lot of introverts and have a lot of introvert friends, that introverts learn better when they are able to review things, whereas extroverts, it's like, I didn't even know I was thinking it until it came out of my mouth, sort of thing. Yeah. So with our introverts, sometimes we can design a program that's like, hey, I want you to spend the next 2 days looking at this SharePoint and write down, and that's good. It's good to have people go back to a place where all of this information is stored. And that's part of what First 30 will do for our clients. We actually automate everything and make sure all of the files are organized and stored and easy to find for your employees. But that's not all it should be. Like we say at First 30, our technology and our software should enable the human connection. It shouldn't be a replacement for it. So we want to make sure that we're reinforcing anything that people are learning from a SharePoint or documents in their interactions. It's not enough to just point them to documents and have them review. That's super boring too, for anybody. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, and it could also be part of that impression. You're setting precedents for how you're going to interact with the company, and that might not be the best way that your company wants to go about their business.
Yeah, it's certainly not the way that most people will learn best. And the other thing when we're thinking about, and we think a lot about the memorability of new employees, we say their brain in those first few days is like a sieve. And it's really interesting because most companies I talk to, they try to get all the orientation in within the first 2 days. That's it. And I'm like, wow. So it doesn't surprise me that people are coming back with a lot of questions for HR or their manager over the next month or 2 months or 3 months. Because if you think about it, you learn about how to file your expenses on day 2.
Yeah.
But when do you actually have expenses? It's not till like day 80.
Yeah. At least,
So yeah, we recommend that our clients put together what we call user-based training or task-based training, where you have like your expense platform might even have these videos already. You have these videos, you have to obviously find somewhere to store them, and that's what we help our clients with. But what you want to do is make sure that your employees have access to that, because it's not just about people's time, it's about the confidence of your employee. You don't want them to have to go to their manager, they're still relatively new, and say, hey, I really don't know how to do expenses, I'm so embarrassed, it's been 3 months. And then guess what, 2 months later they're like, hey, once again I'm doing my expenses and I haven't done them for 2 months.
Yeah, if it's not part of their everyday routine or their
Yeah.
everyday like job description, then yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Those questions are going to creep up.
for sure. And the worst one is benefits claims, right? Because you don't want to have to share with your manager what you're claiming. And so
Yeah.
you have to sit there with these receipts and be like, "Ooh," and it's not, it just is, it doesn't empower your new employees. And this is part of what, if they're feeling uncomfortable and insecure in the organization, they're just going to feel like, I don't know, this organization isn't really good at taking care of me. How good are we at taking care of our customers and our clients? And like, should I worry? That sort of thing.
So I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I had one quick question. I was saying, obviously it depends on the size of your business and the industry you're in, but like, what is your recommended onboarding timeline? Obviously,
Yeah.
like not 2 days.
Not 2 days. Yeah, good one. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we call ourselves first 30. We actually don't even believe that the onboarding process ends after the first 30 days. We think of the onboarding process as use our platform with all of your onboarding content on it for the first 30 days. But then there's this rite of passage, right? Because you can't be on an onboarding platform forever. You're kind of in that like learn phase, learn and understand. And then you definitely want someone contributing. Some companies need you to be contributing earlier than others. So what you want to do then is you want to maybe have them still in like an email sequence. That's
like a nurture drip.
Pardon me?
A nurture drip is what we call it.
A nurture drip of information. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And you want that to continue, I would say, for their first 90 days, because you want to anchor them back. Like you want to anchor them in wherever they can find that information. And you want to make sure that you're kind of reinforcing everything that you've been teaching all along. Yeah. Yeah. It's a complicated thing. And I really think actually we're running a session. And it's on that landing page that I put together. We're running a session about how to build your onboarding program. I think that one's in March. It's early March. Don't hold me to a date. I think it's the 1st or 2nd that we're running that session, where we're actually going to help participants figure out how to build that onboarding program. And definitely we would never recommend the first few days. But the problem for a lot of employers is they have HR running that onboarding in person. And of course, you can't have somebody dedicated to that for their entire job every single day, bringing in new people and continually teaching them.
That's right.
Yeah. So so you want to make sure that you're considering the fact that your employees, their memories might be like a sieve. You definitely want to be getting them, knowing the team. You want to start empowering them. It really depends, obviously, on the position that they're in or the type of job they're doing. But you want to encourage them. You want to set up some meetings for them initially but not too many, right? Again, on those first few days, you don't want like 20 people showing up to a Teams meet because it is incredibly difficult. But the other thing we do with our new hires, like when we're working with our clients, we encourage them. We have a little resource that we put in our onboarding platform called Roundtable Ready. Yeah. And Roundtable Ready is where you kind of, I don't know, for me, I would go to meetings, even if I was experienced in the organization, and we'd have a supplier come in and we go around the table. It's like, oh, we're going to introduce ourselves and tell one fun fact. Like, and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I? What do I do? Like, I was very grateful, Bianca, that you introduced me today. But if we're put on the spot about that, and my very least favorite exercise as part of this process is when you play Two Truths and a Lie in a team. Please don't ever engage me in Two Truths and a Lie.
They're good icebreakers though, but yeah, not everybody like plays well in that game.
Not everybody plays well, and I find it awkward because you're trying to think of like, what do I really want to tell my colleagues? And like, if you're new, it's really what do I want to talk about myself?
What kind of boundaries do I have?
Exactly. So, I mean, we want people to maybe get a little bit of a heads up. Hey, you're going to have to introduce yourself. Here's a little Roundtable Ready exercise. Think about what you would say about who you are and what you've done and the organization. So, I mean, we put that in our program because we know how important it is to be ready to answer that question. But I would actually say anybody should try that Roundtable Ready exercise.
Yeah, but being prepared really does help the confidence of, everyone at the table as well. So it's important.
Yeah, it really does help. And especially like if you are being kind of overwhelmed with a lot of meetings and meeting a lot of new people all at one time, because you're going to be the focus. The other thing I think that companies should consider, and this is very much outside of what we do, but when we talk in sessions about this, we definitely make the recommendation that you want to make sure that when you have people on a call and it's their first few calls, first week or so with an organization, you maybe need a facilitator for that first team meeting who keeps everything on track, who keeps engaging the new hire, but also makes sure that there isn't too much of inside jokes and things happening on these calls or in these meetings, because it can be very awkward. It makes you feel like you're outside of the organization. And
True.
Sherry, my partner, and I, we always talk about what we're trying to do when we're onboarding is we want people to go from you to saying you about the organization when you launched this campaign, when you did this, to when we launched this campaign or when we did this. So going from that you to we is a good indicator of if you've brought someone along, if they're feeling engaged with the organization, and that will help you to retain them as a new hire because you can see or a sign that they're going to stay.
I wanted to mention a really amazing experience that I had when I got hired onto Wagepoint a couple of years ago now. And in that our CEO, he hires on the premise of like emotional intelligence. And as part of that pre-onboarding call, process, the CEO has a culture call with every hire. It's a really amazing experience because you have a very like authentic conversation about how he started the business, how he runs the business, how he, loves the culture of what he's designing and how everybody is involved. And it was such an amazing experience for me as part of my, pre-onboarding experience. It set that precedence and imprinted on me, as your words.
Imprinted on you positively. Yeah, that's very impressive. I think that says a lot about the Wagepoint organization for sure. For him to do that, it's a really good idea. You know what? I was going to say one more thing, and I lost my train of thought.
Can I ask you a few questions because I have some burning questions?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so And I know a lot of people are going to want to know this.
Yeah.
How can I measure higher turnover at my company?
Yeah. So new hire turnover. So you want to look at a lot of bigger businesses will have all of these stats kind of available in their systems. So you can always pull that data. If you're a smaller organization, it's kind of easier in a way. You can track what's happening, but you really want to look at the people who are leaving between, after anywhere from their first day. Some people aren't even showing up for their first day,
I
by the way.
know, I've
And
heard.
that's why pre-boarding is so important. But we want to really look at those stats from the first 3, 6, 8 months. But a lot of businesses will look up to 18 months.
Do you believe in the exit interview when people are exiting?
Actually, it's funny. We just sent out a mail to our mailing list today where we said, exit interviews are good, stay interviews are better.
Stay interviews. I
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, because stay interviews, there's trigger points for those stay interviews. For one thing, you want to get them definitely at the year mark with employees, because 18 months is a time when people are starting to think, and you want to head them off and find out what is going on. But yeah, we run retention interventions at First 30 with our clients, but you can do this on your own. You can learn. We're going to start working on some training that we'll release on how to run state interviews, because it's not just about the question that you ask, it's how you ask the question and who asks the question. So I have 20 years of research experience with employees and consumers. So I'm pretty much a stickler for how we ask people, because what people say and what they do are two very different things, and how they feel. So if we use, at First 30, we use projection techniques to really draw people out. We don't depend on, we're showing them pictures and getting them to talk about those. We're getting them to do all kinds of things, because it's
love
really
that.
hard to figure out what's in someone's heart, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. So exit interviews are good, but stay interviews are better. I'm totally going to quote you on that.
Oh, okay, for sure. Go ahead. I don't know that I'm the first one to say it, but it's funny. We just literally put out an email today where we were talking. We actually on our site have proven strategies to 10 proven strategies to increase your retention rates on our blog. So anyone can check that out too. And we were just kind of, talking about what's in that blog. So that's how that came up. But I just feel like exit interviews, like I said, yeah, that's great. But the person's already leaving. If you had done this earlier, you might have been able to keep them.
Yeah, it's a good point. Saved your 30 to 50% on rehiring costs.
That's right. Yeah, save that money for sure. Yeah. So did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask?
There are a couple more here if you want to keep answering. I don't want to interrupt you because you lost.
No, I've said enough. I'm happy to answer questions now.
All right. Okay, so there's a couple here. Okay, so and I know you just mentioned it in part of your blog, but what are, the top main reasons for turnover, or is recruitment or onboarding an issue when you do identify those points where you're finding a high turnover? Like, so the recruitment, is that that's obviously pre-onboarding, right?
Yeah. So I guess is a question, where is the system broken?
Yeah, I guess that would
Am I bringing in the wrong people? Because I think what happens is, and I hope this answers the question, is that sometimes we give people the wrong idea about what the job is going to be. We oversell the position. And I think we should be really realistic about what the role entails and what the work environment is. Because if we oversell, I actually used to be a hostess when I was a teenager at a restaurant. And they said to me, if you think that it's going to take 10 minutes to seat someone, tell them it's going to take 15. Because if you tell them it's going to take 5 and it takes 10, they're going to get really angry.
What is it called? Over promise and over promise,
Over promise, under deliver. Under promise, over deliver. You'll be the hero. Yeah. And I get it. Companies are having a huge problem with attraction, right? And that's what I'm writing my book on, my next book. But one of the issues is attraction. And I think that companies are trying to strut their stuff in the job ads. I actually don't think that a lot of companies, no offense to anybody, but I see a lot of poorly written job ads, like really poorly written. And they're written for a world that I started my career in. Like, here's what you're going to do for me. And here is what is required. I need you to bring. Whereas I think job ads need to be flipped on their head. Here is what we offer our employees. Here is why we are a great place to work. Here are some of the things we need from you, a list of 5. Don't. Yeah. What I think companies are doing is they're not really thinking in the mindset of that candidate. So I don't know if I answered your question. I think there's a ton of work that can be done on careers pages and job ads for sure. And so that might be part of the problem, part of what is broken.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I would love your thoughts. So personally, as a fly on the wall in many payroll related topic communities in the social media land, I often see lately this whole they're like the actual like hiring process where you're going through the interviews and like entertaining new jobs, like that is just so expensive now because employers are so much more invested in the benefits and the employee retention and all of the things they're offering candidates as part of working for them, that they're really trying to weed them out during these interview processes. And it's so extensive and long. Like people are having, 5 interviews and it's like, it's absolutely crazy. They're meeting with the recruiter, then they're meeting with this person, then this person. And it's like, what is your, like, if you were to scale that down and make that, ideal for somebody, like just to understand in the basic sense, like how many interviews is max?
I think personally, you shouldn't be asking people to come in for more than 3 interviews. Yeah. And I think the very first interview should be a call or a Zoom or a Meets, because I don't think we should be having people travel to meet us. You won't get anybody's colds this way. Just have it. True. But the other thing is, stop asking candidates for cover letters. Unless they're going to be in corporate comms, stop. Yeah. You're actually ruined. Like, if you want to attract more qualified candidates, it's just so much work. And I feel really bad for new immigrants as well, because then they're trying to compete and they might have exceptional skills, but their written English is not where that employer wants it to be. But do they need it to be there? Or is it just like, oh, this letter reads better, so I'm going to talk to this person? The other thing I would recommend companies do to tighten this process, make sure you get the right people in the right role. As part of the interview, I know that you were talking about testing on their personality, not their personality, but what did you say? That their EQ sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, emotional intelligence, just having conversations around emotional intelligence and trying to identify, the emotional intelligence of the person you're interviewing, your candidates, because, having that as an important hiring factor in your company culture can really improve retention and longevity of the brand.
And I think for some jobs it is very necessary. For others it may not be as necessary, but I would say give your people you're interviewing a case study in the interview. So if you need them, I used to work in research, like I said, if you need them to know how to solve problems and come up with insights, give them a document and say, put together 5 slides in the next 30 minutes or whatever, or give it to them to take home for the next time they come in. You don't want to take too much of their time, so it should be simple. But learn about how they think and make it a little bit of a project. I think it's so much better than sitting down with someone. So tell me about yourself. Like, you want to do a little bit of that, but people are really good at faking it too, right?
Yep. Mirroring. That's like the big thing nowadays, especially like in the neurodivergent world where you're trying to be attentive to inclusivity and diversity and, there's a lot of that mirroring and things going on that people can like be a certain way on the spot, but then they internalize and process things way differently afterwards. And
Yeah.
coming back to the table and like being authentic can sometimes be challenging. So that's important, giving them the space to, you know, prepare for that sort of thing if that is going to be part of the expectation for the interview is important.
Well, and you know, I'm really good at talking and being put on the spot, right?
Yeah, me too.
But I'm not, yeah, but I'm not the smartest person in the room. I can guarantee you of that. And somebody who's not talking and sitting right next to me, probably because I'm talking too much, might get overlooked when they're better than I am, right? Way better. So we need to think about like that will give your person who is that balance of introversion and extroversion the opportunity. That person who's an extrovert is going to do a great verbal presentation. The person who's an introvert is going to do a good job of thinking through that problem, perhaps. And then you can give them both a chance to shine and demonstrate what their skills really are. So yeah, I would totally turn that process on its head if I could.
Well, we've been given the time for today, so I think we'll have to end on that note unless you have one really important highlighting fact that you want to just let the community know before we leave today.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, don't think you have to do all of this all at once. Start small, start with a pilot and grow from there. If you want to know, kind of connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And we run events all the time, which you're welcome to attend. And yeah, I'd love to get to know you.
Thanks so much for your time today, Amy. That was such a great conversation. We could have probably talked for another hour.
I know. Call me after.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the 17thfloor.com webinar. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Thanks.